Good morning, everybody. It's Jess here at the Speckled Sheep, and I'm coming to you at 11 o'clock today. Very excited to show you another demo for the week. So all week long we're on vacation and we're not doing our normally scheduled live at 11s. So I created these different demo videos to post automatically at 11 o'clock for me while I'm gone so that we're not missing out too much. Today I want to talk about joining. I have 6 different types of joining to show you guys. So I hope that you really can learn a lot from this video. It's one of the more popular questions we get asked here in the store for help. How do I join on a new piece of yarn? So before I get into that, I want to remind everybody that all week long our relief kits are on sale, 15% off. They are up on the online store for 15% off. And I also want to remind you that every day at the end of the video that we're doing, we have a daily promotion that is changing. And today's daily promotion I will reveal at the end of the video, a chance to get a good deal that is good for one day. So first up, let's start with a no-knot join. This is the most simple and traditional joining method you can use in knitting. I just have my little swatch here, and I have a new skein of yarn that I'm ready to attach. And this is for no-knot knitting. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to hold my new tail, and you want to leave tails long enough that you can weave in your ends later. So 6 to 8 inches is a good estimation for that. And I'm literally just going to start knitting my new stitch, and I'm going to take my new piece of yarn and make a little loop, put it over my right hand needle, and I'm going to hold both of ends of it for a little tension and finish knitting my stitch. Then from there, I'm just going to work with only my working yarn or what's connected to the ball, and I'm going to finish knitting out my row. It's that simple. You can do this mid-row or at the beginning of a row. Depending on what type of knitter you are, you might have a very strong opinion on whether or not you always join in the middle of a row or on the edge of a row. Personally, here at the shop, our opinion is that it's very situationally based on when you should do that. So you can see here from the front, you can't tell where I joined. From the back, I've got 2 little tails. At this point, if you want to just be extra sure that these don't get really loose on you, you can tie them into a simple little knot that you take out later, like a little slip knot, just to keep the tails from getting caught in things or to keep those stitches from getting loose on you. But you really don't have to do that. And then what you're going to do when you come back around for your finishing is you'll weave these ends in, and you'll weave in this end in that direction and this end, which comes from this stitch, in this direction, making sure that you change directions and weave back in. So basically, you never tie a knot, you just weave your ends in opposite directions, overlapping here like this, a little twist, and you'll be right as rain. You'll have no problems with that. And if you had done that on the ends, then you would just go, opposite directions and start up and down. So that is a great way to join. You just start by holding your new yarn together, or holding your new yarn and knitting with it. If you like something a little bit more secure, and that's not exactly your cup of tea, then I have 5 other joining techniques that you can use. The first one I'm going to demonstrate today is the Russian join. And the Russian join requires the use of a tapestry needle. And I'm going to demonstrate that today on this yarn here. I have to start by threading my yarn into my tapestry needle or darning needle, which is going to be a bit of a struggle today because I'm trying to do it through the cameras. Alright, so we got him threaded on. And now what we're going to do is just leaving a bit of a tail so it doesn't pull out of our needle. I'm going to lay my, say this is my current project yarn. You have to do this before you get really to the end of your project. Or to the end of your yarn. You need to have enough room to work with here. So at least a foot, I would say. So if this is my project yarn, then I have my working ball yarn ready to go over here, and I'm going to lay that over here for now, and I'm going to then take my needle and I'm going to go into that strand of yarn, and I'm going to weave back and forth back into the yarn connected to my project. So I'm looping it over the new yarn and weaving back through. You can see here how I'm going in and out like I'm hand sewing, splitting the plies of the yarn. You want to do this for a couple of inches. Trying to get through the middle of the strand. You want to make sure you still got a good couple of twists in between each in and out, and it'll start to look something like this. I'm then going to make sure that I don't lose my loop of my new yarn. I'm going to pull all of this down onto the yarn. My needle can come out at that point, and I'm creating a nice little looped over bit where my yarn is woven in and out of itself. Now I have it looped onto the new yarn, and what I'm going to do is thread that onto my tapestry needle. Got two little frays in there that don't want to come along with me. Going to trim my end. This is the most annoying part of the Russian join. You want your eye big enough that your yarn fits through, but not so big that it makes a big bump to get over when you do the pull through process. Alright guys, third time's going to be the charm here. There we go. Okay, now I'm ready to go back in, and here again I'm going to work right on the other side of my loop, and I'm just going to go in and out and weave up and down this whole strand of yarn, again working back into itself. So for the Russian join, you're going to work old yarn into old yarn and then new yarn into new yarn. Again, a couple of inches is the goal, and then you're going to pull everything through. You can take your tapestry needle off at this point and get everything nice and happy. So now they're looped together here. Doing this, if you were using two different colors, your tail would go back, like blue would go back onto blue and red would go onto red. So you wouldn't have to worry about two different colors. And then you take the tail bit and you just trim him flush. You can do this now or after you finish knitting and block your project. It doesn't really make a difference either way. Different people have different preferences. So we can trim those, and now you'll just keep knitting and your yarn will be thicker here, but you have a very stable join that will kind of weave in as you go. It's a very nice joining technique, and it looks very nice when you've knitted it. So that was called the Russian join. Next, I want to show you basically the same thing. I call it the chainette join, but really it's the Russian join applied to chainette construction yarn. So I have 2 pieces of a chainette construction yarn here. This yarn is unique in its construction in that it is actually a thin tube of yarn. So this is actually hollow core. You can see I stuck my needle all the way up inside this yarn, kind of like a nice long scarf. And we're going to utilize that structure today to make a very, very simple join. So again, we need to thread this on to our tapestry needle. And we're going to basically do the same thing. So I have my old yarn on my left and my new yarn on my right. I'm going to lay my new yarn piece over my old and then double back up into my old. And in this case, instead of weaving in and out of our yarn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and kind of treat this like a needle end of vein. That's what it always reminds me of. So if we were going to like try and give this yarn an IV, we would just pop right into it and then follow all the way up the center tube of the yarn structure. So we want to go all the way up the core for several inches, and you can really do this nice and far. It's very easy to do. I'm going to go, I have a long needle here, but I'm going to go probably like 4 inches or more. So I'm all the way up there. If you poke out and you don't want to be poked out, just pull it back a little bit till your tip disappears and then go back in. And now I'm going to pull my needle through. My needle can come off at that point. Make sure that you don't lose this little loop. And pull everything. Again, here you can trim this off now or later and it does not matter. I'll trim them off when I'm done joining. Now I'm going to take the new yarn, which is currently looped into the old, and I'm going to put it back into itself. I'm going to give myself a fresh end here. There we go. And now I'm going to pop into my tube and just run straight up the center. For a good couple of inches. And then pull through. Going to kind of massage it over the end there where we've got the tail coming in. And now pull it tight. So here you can see our join is flawless. You can barely even see it. I went in far enough on this one that my tail completely ended. It ends right about here. You can feel it, you just can't see it. And then on this end, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit, trim it flush, making sure not to cut my full strand of yarn. And then when I pull it, the end just completely disappears. Now I have a beautiful, strong join where my yarn just seamlessly goes from one to the other. I love doing this method of joining. It only works this well on a chainette construction yarn, but it is absolutely flawless. I love it, and there are so many wonderful applications for it in yarns that are made today with that chainette construction. So wonderful yarn, very excited for that join. Then I have a new style, or another style of joining, and it is called the splice. And the splice is best, in my opinion, for large sized yarn. So this here is a super bulky yarn, and you can see it's made up of many plies, all these different little pieces that are twisted together to make the yarn. And what we're going to do is we're going to splice it together. So what I'm going to do is just a very basic splice. You can get as complicated with this as you want. And I'm going to untwist those two halves of the yarn for a good couple of inches. You want to do this so that at least 2 or 3 stitches will get knit together. And I'm going to cut half of it out. So now I have a good section of yarn where I only have half of it. And my other end, so that was my old yarn. Now I'm going to work with my new yarn. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take 3 plies out of the 6. Now you could do different levels and stagger them. You could do whatever you like. You could do 2 and 4. And I'm going to cut out, it really helps to have better scissors than what I'm working with here, another splice. So now I've got 2 pieces that are half as thick of the same length. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist these together. So now I have what looks like a single strand of yarn again, and keep knitting with these held together. So that is called the splice, and it kind of wants to undo itself. You can get more and less particular about your ends and all of that. There's different ways to perfect it. But you can be as simple with it or as fancy with it as you want. And it allows you to not have a lot of extra bulk when you're working with what's already really bulky yarn. It does work very well with other yarns. You need to have a multi-ply. It does not work with single ply, and it does not work with chainette construction. So a plied yarn will work very well with the splice method. After the splice method, we have the magic knot, and I love the magic knot for a variety of different uses, including slippery yarns. So if you're using a yarn that is particularly slick and it's of a normal construction, so you can't use the chainette construction, then what I would highly recommend you do is work with the magic knot. And this is also my go-to just basic join if you're afraid of doing a no knot join, or if you're afraid of doing a if you don't have a tapestry needle to do some of these other methods with you, so and you're afraid of this coming apart. So I have my yarn here and I'm ready to join. This is a bamboo blend yarn, so it's got a bit of slipperiness to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my new ball and I'm going to join onto this. So I've got my old yarn, or yarn A I like to call it, with my new yarn, yarn B, and I'm going to lay them over top of each other and then loop them back on. So at this point it looks very similar to the Russian join. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie yarn A around itself. So yarn A gets tied on to yarn A, and then yarn B gets tied on to yarn B, and they're looped in the middle. At this point, this is a lot like making bracelets in art class when you were a kid. You're going to pull the knots together, and all you have are these 2 tiny little knots, and everything's all ready to go. And this is strong enough, we call it the magic knot, that you can trim these right up against the knot and it will hold. This gives you a little bit more reassurance. Now, if you still think I am not daring enough, I don't want to do that, you can leave those tails and knit those tails in with your project, or weave those tails in later and you won't have a problem. You'll be even more secure. But that is the magic knot, and then you just keep on knitting. It's nice and strong. You can see I'm putting a good bit of pressure on that. And then you just knit it right on in if you had something like a lacy project and maybe your yarn broke or something like that, this is a good knot to do because it's going to be as minimal as you can keep it without having to weave in a lot of ends through a lace section. And then as you knit him into your project, you won't have any problems whatsoever with its durability. And again, if you wanted to doubly ensure its secureness, you could always use the ends still and knit them in with your project or weave them in later, and it would be even more secure. So that's the magic knot. You can see it tucked away on the purl side very nicely. It's very well hidden, and we're not worried about him popping out or popping apart at all. The magic knot is a wonderful knot. I really love it. All right, I'm just going to finish out this row here so that I'm good to go for my next video. And then I want to show you guys one last join, and that is called the spit join or the felted join. And this join works particularly well for any wool yarn, especially single ply wools where it would be very hard to knot it, or just any kind of wool that's going to felt. It does not work for superwash yarns. It will work for a silk yarn usually, and it's very, very simple to do. So what I like to do is just kind of help it along a bit. I loosen up the plies if there are any by kind of like untwisting it and fraying it a bit. I'm using as my demonstration here Connie yarn. I'm going to do this for a couple of inches, and I'm going to do it to both of my ends that I want to join. So I'm just going to kind of rough up this yarn a bit, fray it a bit. You can even go as far as separating these plies. And then it's called the spit join because the idea is you just have to like get it wet. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. I have a fresh water bottle here. I'm just going to get my hand a little bit wet, and I'm going to lay the yarn in here, get it a little wet. That will facilitate the felting. And then I'm going to take that yarn, lay it itself over each other for a couple of inches, and I'm going to, you can do this against a table, but I find it works best against your hand. I'm going to lay it between my palms and just rub it together like mad. So we're just going to rub, 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 getting all of those ends nice and securely in there. Rub, rub, rub. You'll feel it getting hot from the friction, and that is what's helping to create that felted join. Again, it's also called a spit join because the idea is if you had nothing else with you, you would just kind of spit on the yarn and make it wet. And now we have a felted piece. No knots, so it's very fluid when you go to knit it, and it's all joined together, ready to go. And you can do this again on a table, but it just, to me, it works much better hand on hand. And you felt it all up, and it sticks together. You're good to go. So that is 6 different methods of joining yarn. I hope that it made a difference in your knitting. I hope that you learned something, maybe a new version of joining yarn that you don't use often. There are many. I'm sure that there are probably near 100 different methods, but these are the ones that we see most commonly used and that we like the most. So on this piece I showed you no knot, so we just started by holding one strand together. Here I showed you the Russian join. Then we had the chainette construction, or the Russian join using crochet chainette construction. Then we did a quick splice with a super bulky yarn, great for bulky things. Then we did the magic knot, and then we did the spit join or felted join. All right, guys, I told you I had a coupon code for you, and I do not want to disappoint you. So today I have coupon code CHANGE71. And coupon code CHANGE71 will get you 15% off interchangeable sets by Chaigyu or Leiki today only. Order those sets and you can get interchangeable needle sets at 15% off today, in addition to our normal 15% off week-long relief kit sale. All right, guys, I hope that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful 4th of July. I will see you again tomorrow at 11.